Hey, Paul, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
I'm Paul Hutchberg, been in sales for about 23 years. Some of my background is I started in financial services in the Boston area, providing life insurance, things like that. I realized pretty quickly that wasn't for me. I wanted to sell more business to business. Ended up going to Dell in Austin, Texas. That really kind of transformed my sales career, started building my success, my confidence. I moved up the ranks there fairly quickly and ultimately ended up in the SMB acquisition space. And my claim to fame, and a long time ago, but in 2006, I was number one of all sales. And I always will remember the day my manager kind of showed me the stack rankings, which was pretty cool because there's like 20,000 sales reps at Dell. From Dell, I ended up working at Gartner, spent a few years at Gartner. Gartner, phenomenal training, gave me the opportunity to work in the mid-size space and work with kind of CIOs and their direct reports. Since Gartner, last 13 plus years, I've been at a company called ConnectWise and been selling to managed service providers, technology companies. Really, I guess the claim to fame there is when I started, I was employee 107. We're now over 3,000 employees. We're a global company, and we're nearing on $1 billion in sales. And so, you know, I was part of a sale of the company as well with the original owners, and potentially maybe a second one down the road with the new owners. So it's been really exciting.
So you were number one in all of Dell?
All of Dell. Yep.
Wow. Percentage of quota, total revenue?
No, they had at Dell, they had a stack ranking, so it wasn't just quota. It was like selling certain lines of business and close rate, and they had all these metrics. And I was number one in 2006.
Excellent. How'd that make you feel?
Amazing. Yep.
Yeah.
And I remember too, the senior director emailed my dad, which was kind of cool. So he came over to me. He came over to me and he said, "What's your dad's email address?" And he sent an email to my dad. And
Yeah.
so, you know.
That feel even better?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm one of those people that, I've always looked up to my dad, and it was something that, you know, I kind of stumbled at the beginning of my career. I didn't do very well in financial services, and then it took me a little bit of time to kind of land at Dell and get my footing and understand sales. And even when I started at Dell, it was very overwhelming for me. Most of the people that I was training with were seniored, they were very technical. And what I realized very quickly is that wasn't my skill set. And so, I realized I could build rapport very, very quickly. And I just kind of focused on understanding, what it is they were looking for and then just went for the kill. And so, when I was at Dell, it was very transactional for me and I was able to close deals much faster than any of the other reps, which attributed to my success, opposed to geeking out on the technology because honestly, at that point in my career, I didn't really understand it. And so I didn't spend too much time, talking about it. It was more, what's your budget? When are you looking to buy? All right, what's your credit card number? Let's move on. You know,
Yeah. Very transactional.
very transactional. Yeah.
But what you're selling today isn't transactional, is it?
No, no. So I work with technology companies. We sell a suite of products from service automation to remote monitoring management to services like help desk knock. It's a white labeled service to technology companies. So if you think about any organization that you go to that has technology, they're probably using ConnectWise products behind the scenes. And I'm a strategic, what we call a strategic sales exec. So I work larger deals at ConnectWise, and they have longer sales cycles with them. And the average, I would say, annual contract value is probably 50 to maybe 75,000 in that range. And I think I carry about a $2.5 million quota. Uh,
And what drives you? What gets you up in the morning? What fires you up? Because clearly you're a competitive guy.
Yeah, I mean, I would honestly say at this point in my career, I would say the drive is just being number one. Like you know, at least at the company that I'm at, right? You know, yeah, everyone's goal is to beat me, and they tell me that, and it's kind of fun, right? To have a goal that they're never going to achieve, right? No, but joking aside, it is that competitiveness.
Yeah.
Um, Candidly, I don't know how many people are going to watch this, but I mean, I could live off half of the money that I make and live comfortably. Like one of the things that my wife and I have done over the years is that as I've made more money, we've looked at it as like savings or other aspects. We don't just spend and spend. And so, I literally could live. So it's not about the money, even though obviously it's sales, money's important, but it is about the competitive aspect of what I do. And it's beating what I did last year and certainly being number one and then destroying my competition, right? I often joke I kind of feel bad for my competition because they have no chance in a head-to-head deal, against me because I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. I'm going to build rapport. I'm going to do a great discovery. I give out my cell phone to these people, because if they say, "Oh, I'm concerned about support. I'm support about that." Don't worry. Here's my cell phone. You call me. I'll take care of it. I've been with the company forever. I'll go up all the way up to the CEO if I have to do that for you. And so
Yeah.
it's building that trust with them that ultimately, if they buy from me, um, that I'm going to take care of them. And that's really, I think, a big aspect of sales is they're not buying ConnectWise or fill in the brand company. They're buying from me. And
Yeah.
ultimately, I have to represent the company, pre-sales and post-sales.
And where's this competitiveness come from?
Um, you know, I've always had it. I was always, even growing up, I was a sore loser. And, you know, I actually wanted to play professional basketball. And then, as my dad told me, white Jewish, I'm not going to be over 6 feet tall and I'm 5'9". I really didn't have a shot there. So as those dreams, went to the wayside as I hit high school, sales is kind of the next best thing for someone who's super competitive, and always wants to be at the top. And then I really got a taste for that in my Dell days, where everything there was super, super competitive. They had stack rankings, they had recognition on a monthly basis. They really did things the right way. And I've seen that throughout other organizations. ConnectWise does the same thing, with trips and things like that. And there's an element of you want to be recognized, you want to be at the top, and you want to be, the best month after month, quarter after quarter. Now with that, there's a lot of work that goes into it. So I mean, anyone who wants to be, and that's what I talk to, many reps. I do a lot of training with new reps, around sales. Is that if you want to be the best, it's literally day in, day out. It is a commitment. You're taking, less vacation time. You're working every end of month, every end of quarter. You're getting in early. You're doing things above it. It's not just about working hard too, because you need to learn your technology. You need to have your value story, right? You need to go into these opportunities because a lot of times you only have one shot. And if you blow it, that prospect's moved on, right? So I make sure not to blow it. I make sure to go in unprepared. I know, you know, just in a quick 5 or 10 minutes with a prospect, what their issues are, even if they don't know what they are, because I know the space, right? I know what I'm doing. And I truly have kind of no fear in the aspect of when I'm talking to a prospect to, tell them how, where they're wrong, where they're right, what they need to do and why. And a lot of times I get prospects who are thinking about things that they weren't thinking about was even a problem, or they had a problem that they thought they had, which isn't really a problem, type of thing. And I think that's extremely valuable because I'm bringing value to the table to them. And then that helps throughout the rest of the sales cycle to then when we get to the demos, right? And we get to the close and we get to those aspects of it. I think the biggest misconception out there is that, the demo is what sells people. And that's not accurate at all. The demo just checks the box, right? We all assume every technology
Thing
company out
works.
there is going to give a great demo, right? That's what they do. That's why they have engineers. So they just check that box. It's really what you've done on the front end to position, your organization, your product, your value story, how you're different yourself as the sales professional, and to get them excited and keep them excited through the process, right? That's the way I view it.
And who's the point of contact at the customer side? Is it CIO? Is it chief architect? Is it operations?
Yeah, I mean, it could be the CEO, it could be someone at the C level, CIO, CTO, CFO, or it could just be one of their direct reports, and so it varies. And from what we sell at ConnectWise, we have technical products which sometimes don't land necessarily with the CEO. So it could be like the IT team, right? So certainly winning them over and then helping champion that to the executives for price and budget. We also have a service automation tool that touches the entire business. Certainly, the CEO is going to be involved because that's something that runs their entire business. And so we typically do get access to those people, but it varies on which technology we're selling.
And what makes you good at this? I mean, 'cause I'm sure you've been there forever. You've seen good, great, and okay, and probably pretty bad. You compete
Sure. Yeah.
against people.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think it starts with, I think I just check all the boxes when you look at salespeople, from, my aptitude to learn technology, to talk to people that are evaluating the technology, as someone who's not an engineer myself, who's not super technical, but can have that conversation with someone who understands sales and sales process, right? So that I can navigate the prospect through from a discovery all the way through close, in a in a process that makes sense, that moves it along in a quick fashion, right? I'm not putting roadblocks in there to create steps. I'm accountable. I'm confident. I have conviction in what I'm doing. I truly believe in what I'm selling, and I think that's another big component. And I'm naturally curious, right? So like when I'm talking to a prospect, like I'm always kind of curious how they're doing things, why they're doing it, have they considered other options, and having those conversations with them, it really helps. Where it's not. I work with a lot of reps where a lot of times their discovery is super short. They just can't wait to pitch stuff, right? And just kind of throw up all over the prospect type of thing. And that's it's tough to listen to, right? And it's like spend a little bit more time getting to know them to understand, because then when you transition into your sales pitch, then you got them. Then you can bring back things that they said, that they talked about, that they didn't even realize by telling me is an opening for something else that I sell.
Yeah.
And that's where a big success of mine has been, is that I'm very good at cross-selling and upselling and creating value.
And, you know, Dell probably gave you some technical experience here, but was Gartner helpful and more of a strategic sale, an intangible?
Yeah, Gartner was super helpful from a training perspective. They gave a lot of insight into, how to navigate that conversation from from a value standpoint with C-level executives. How to build
Yeah.
rapport, because Gartner it was total opposite. Like if you look at Dell and Gartner,
Right.
Dell is very
Total
transactional.
opposite, right?
Gartner, and I had a few different roles at Gartner, but for the most part, I was working with like pretty large organizations and C-levels that had pretty large budgets. And so, yeah, when you got onto that, it couldn't be I couldn't use the same way that I sold at Dell. It was vastly different, when I went into Gartner, and it was really about building that rapport and trust, with with the CIO, with the CTO, and if you got access to a CFO, even better, type of thing. Rarely were you working with a CEO, type of thing. But they had phenomenal training there. And so I gained a lot. I've had a lot of different training throughout my career. And I wouldn't say that I've adopted anything specifically. I think it's more that I've incorporated into kind of my personality. And ultimately, I'm just comfortable, in my own skin, if you will, in terms of when I'm selling, I'm just me, and, I think I'm just, I hate to say it because people say it, I'm just likable, I guess. I remember my, again, going back into high school, I didn't get cut from my baseball team, and it was horrible because the coach said he just liked me too much, so he kept me on the team, type of thing. And so, but when you're selling, I think that's a good thing if you're naturally likable,
Yeah.
and it's someone that they can, trust and kind of work with. That, hey, this isn't just a sleazy sales guy just trying to make a commission. I walk around like I've got $1 million in my pocket at all times. I don't I don't need the sale as much as you need my solution, right? And that has always been, kind of my philosophy, even when I've struggled in my career, even when, early on and I had to, sleep in my car, and, it had to do things that you're like, you look back and like, oh my God. And even today, even though I don't have to do that, right? I've had a lot of success. I make a good living. But I still adhere to the same things.
And when you hear other reps say, "Well, I'm not competitive," what's your reaction to that?
They're in the wrong business. Like I,
Mm.
I don't understand how you can't be in sales and not be competitive. Like it is the most competitive, business, and it's so difficult. It really is. Like the amount of, because here's the thing, right? And I don't want to knock anyone who's an engineer, who's in support or consulting, but they get a salary, they come in at 9, they leave at 5. Like there's plenty of times where now there are engineers. I have one on my team, phenomenal, who he'll go above and beyond, right? That's not the norm. Most of them check it. Sales, you can never do that. right? Like I work all hours. I get people emailing me weekends. I got to get back to them. You know, sales managers, same thing. It is a job that is relentless, right? And it's constantly you're getting rejected and you can't take it personally, right? If you're not competitive with yourself, with your peers, with your competition, I'll be honest, there's other careers out there that are better suited. Like I don't see it personally.
Yeah, because I've talked to a lot of people about this, and how do you turn it on and turn it off?
I don't know either. Like I'm just always competitive. Like, and it's funny too, is like when someone's beating me for a month or a quarter, and then I get pinged by their manager or them or my manager, and I'm like, okay, we'll see. Yeah, just give me another couple of months, you know. But I love that stuff. Like I thrive on that competition, and the reps that are always it's always the same reps. I've seen it every company. ConnectWise is no different. It's the same people that are at the top every year, and they have that same drive. And the people that are in the middle are always in the middle. The people at the bottom sit at the bottom. The other thing I'll share while I'm thinking of it too is because the people that are at the middle or the bottom, they're always excuses territory or their BDR or lack of leads or something of that nature. And so just to give you a little background at ConnectWise, because I thought it was kind of interesting, the 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 former CRO, he used to joke with me that at some point he's just going to give me like North Dakota because literally I had like a territory and I was crushing it. And then the rep who had Florida was the bottom rep. And I was like, I'll take it. Because the way I looked at it was he wasn't selling. So there's plenty of opportunity. So I went in Florida, crushed it, number one. And then the Northeast came available, and similarly, it was similar. Yeah, that's not a word. The rep there was the bottom rep, and no one wanted that territory. And it was Massachusetts, which obviously I'm from originally, so I like that, and New Jersey. But New York came available. Everyone wanted New York. I was like, I'll take Massachusetts and New Jersey. So I took that territory. I was number one for 2 years. So what did they decide to do? It was unfair. So they broke my territory in half. But no one wanted it, and the rep who was in there was in last place. So maybe at some point, it's not the territory, maybe it's the rep, right? And so, you know, I always kind of find that funny, and it is what it is. And I think for every top performer out there, they know it. They know the work they put in, the knowledge that they have, and you can literally put them in any company, in any territory, and they're going to absolutely crush it. And that's the way I feel about myself and any of the other top reps that I work with. And I've seen it.
Yeah, because they have to make it something other than them. Otherwise, they have to face themselves.
And that's actually a good point is, that's something I've done over my career as well, right? I'm in sales now 23 years, is that things that I was not good at, right? Like at Dell, is a great example. I didn't understand the technology, but I realized that, okay, I could close, right? And I could close fairly quickly. So I had to start learning things and get uncomfortable to get better, right? And even at Gartner, it was more of like, okay, again, I had to get uncomfortable to then not push so hard, build better rapport. And so as I've evolved my career into what it is now, you gain other skills, right? And you have to be open to realizing, hey, I'm not good at this or I'm not good at that. Now, as I sit here today, I do feel like, it's not arrogance, but it is an element of confidence that I do check all of those boxes, which is why I'm at the top every year. So, you know, I help with interviewing. There's other reps that say, hey, I'm going to come to ConnectWise. I'm going to be number one. And I ask them why. Oh, I work so hard, Paul. I work so hard. I'm like, that, okay, so do I. How else are you going to beat me? Right? Like you can't just work hard and beat me because I also work really hard, right? You need a better sales process. You got to be more knowledgeable. You got to be better at upselling, right? Like there's so many other components that go into it than just I'm going to work hard, and so, you know,
Well,
that's a
that's it.
given, right? I assume you're going to work hard.
Yeah, if you want a hard worker, go down to the local restaurant or retail store. They're
Yeah,
working Christmas Eve, right?
yeah,
Working till
yeah,
10, 11 o'clock at night.
absolutely, absolutely.
Because
Only gets you so far in sales.
right, because you very rarely see the grinder as number one. The grinder being the 18-hour a day person.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's actually a great point because I was the 18-hour guy at Dell. I truly was. They called it bell to bell. I was the first one in, last one to leave. Do I do that at ConnectWise? No. I work hard, but I work really, really smart because I don't have to be the first guy in and the last one out because I'm just really good at my job. I have a much higher close rate. I do a great discovery. I do all those other components that I don't have to be the grinder. I still grind, because sales in general is a grind, but I'm not getting up at 7 a.m. and I'm not working till, 10 p.m. and whatever, like I did at Dell, early in my career. So if you're early in your career, you want to be that grinder to
To
learn,
learn.
right, to
Yeah.
absorb. But as you grow in your career, that starts to slow down a little bit because now you've adopted these other skills, so you don't have to, be that bell to bell sales rep.
Let's dig into the work smarter. What do you think you
Yeah.
do smarter than your competitors?
I think I do a good job of anticipation. So it's kind of like a thing that I have where even in terms of this conversation here or calls that I have, I rehearse in my head a million times and every single question they're going to ask. And so I already know how I'm going to answer that. I already know, my story and my wife, it drives her nuts because she listens to my call. She said, you say the same thing every time. I'm like, well, it works, until it doesn't work, and so she's like, I can't listen to your calls anymore. It drives me crazy. But if you don't, if someone asks you a question, you're a sales rep and you don't have an answer, you haven't done you haven't done your job yet, right? Because they're going to ask the same things that everyone else asked, right? I read this on Reddit, right? You should know all the weaknesses of your company. You should know how to address that in a way where they go, okay, I didn't think about that way. Okay, let's move on, type of thing. So I'm just super, super prepared. I know my stuff, and hopefully, as you can tell here, I am confident. I'll tell people, hey, listen, if you partner with me, you partner with my company, it'll be the single best decision you make for your business, hands down. And I'm not saying that to win a deal. I'm saying that because that's what people tell me, right? And I've been doing this for 13 years, and that's what I've been hearing. And I can introduce you to hundreds of people lining up that would tell you the same thing. And
And
then, yeah,
have you ever been burnt out?
yes, yeah, of
How'd you get?
course.
Well, let's talk about how'd you get out of it? Because
You know, there's not an easy way. I don't think a vacation, cures a burnout, to be honest with you. Um, for me, it's getting back in the swing, and all of a sudden, it's that next deal that all of a sudden gets me excited, right? Or that next deal, what actually gets me the most, this is weird, but when I'm talking to a prospect and he goes, I'm highly leaning towards a competitor, my competitive juices go crazy at that point. And I'm just like, nope, I'm winning this one. Nope. And so I go in hyperdrive at that point, and that's usually how I've gone through it. I love what I do. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I'm very passionate about it. And so it's really just getting into that next sale that gets me re-excited again, re-engaged. But of course, I mean, sales, and actually going back to my first ever job, which was financial services, one of the guys there said, every quarter you take a week off, right? I've never done that in my career, but that's what he recommended, because you get that burnout and then you take a week off. I've kind of found when I've taken vacation, it's never enough time and it doesn't cure, burnout, but that's just naturally in sales and what we do. It's just,
but you have a way of decompressing, exercise, whatever. You still play basketball?
nope, nope, haven't played in a long time. I mean, I do work out. Um, other than I invest in the stock market, I travel with my wife, so we love to do stuff like that. So there's other thing. I'm big family person. I went remote before remote was a thing. I went remote in 2015, um, more because it was, something my wife and I wanted to do. We actually went traveling, through the country with our son when he was in middle school, and we went up the East Coast and the West Coast. And, I continued to crush my quota doing it. And it didn't make a difference, but it was an opportunity to spend time, because now he's in college, right? So I look back at the time and how valuable that was, and so I didn't want to be through my career and say, hey, I missed all that stuff for my son. And I think that's the other thing I love about sales is it gives you that opportunity, right? Where, hey, you can make as much as you want. You can achieve those goals, but then you can also spend that time with your family. And I certainly made sure to do that, and I look back with no regrets, now that my son's in college and saying I spent so much time with him. I didn't miss any games, that he had, and I was always there for him. And, we did some amazing stuff. So,
And pre-COVID, was it on-prem where you would visit customers, or was it always remote?
so it was majority remote, but because of some of the territories I had, like when I mentioned before, I had Florida. I actually lived in Florida. So yeah, I would go on site. It wasn't a requirement, to go on
So
site, but
helpful.
it tremendously helps because when I'm sitting there with a prospect and then building that rapport, that lasts for years, right? Like I have a we call him partner, but we'll just say customer that I sold to like a decade ago, and we still chat all the time. And I see him at events and things like that. And I love kind of sharing his story when people were like, I can't sign because of X. This gentleman, he signed it. He was at the Rose Bowl on New Year's Eve. I was trying to get an end of year deal in. It was a really big deal. And he was drinking and we're texting back and forth. And he literally signed the contract. It was like 11:55 as he's watching his Michigan Wolverines in the Rose Bowl. And so if he ever listens, he'll know who he is. um, but that I share that story with a prospect or with salespeople that I work with where, if someone's like, I'm on vacation, I can't sign. What do you mean you can't sign? How can you not sign? I had someone sign at a Rose Bowl. Like that's no longer with technology an excuse of why I can't sign, right? Like I have to be at home in front of my computer. Like no, with DocuSign and other things like that, you just here's a phone, here's an iPad. No, and so I don't I don't kind of let those excuses kind of oh okay hey no problem back in 2 weeks
See you
no
next
problem
year.
see you next year hey no.
And there's a lot of talk today about detaching, which is kind of, yeah, in certain senses, it makes sense. Like you're prospecting, you can't be hyper competitive in prospecting because
Right.
you have no idea where they are and their timing and their need. How do you regulate that competitiveness?
I would say, and I see online a lot around AI and it's going to replace BDRs and things like that. I don't see that ever happening. Because there is an element of, when you're talking to someone is, again, building that relationship. And sometimes, so I started in financial services, which was all about cold calling. It was all about numbers. It was a numbers game, right? And so, and Brian, you probably know as well, like most sales reps, when they're prospecting, they give up the first time or the second time or the fifth time or whatever. But the reality is it's got to be like that 10th time or 15th time, and so as you're calling and you're getting no every single time, you're gaining information on that prospect. Hopefully, right? You're asking a question as
Yeah.
they're hanging up on you, or you're gaining something from the gatekeeper that the
Phone.
next time that you call, that now you're armed with more information and now you can have more value. So I've trained, I don't even know how many BDRs in my career, giving them talk track, things like that. And we powwow all the time on what are they hearing? And then give them, things that they can go back to for the next time, or even that guy, right? Because they didn't think of it there. They're nervous, right? They're on the phone with a prospect. But, you still got to be aggressive. I mean, prospecting, sales, you've got to, but you got to read the room, right? Like that's a big one is being able to read the room. Is it over the line, right? With your prospect or someone you're cold calling? Because here's the thing. I remember plenty of times that I've made a cold call and I've called the guy back 3 months. He doesn't remember me
Why
because they
would
get
he?
so many. Yeah. So I learned that early in my career. So it's like if someone gets annoyed or hangs up, okay, you're on my list to call back in a couple more months. No big deal.
Yeah.
But you want to gain some information. So when you're calling back the next time, it's like, oh, this guy kind of knows what's going on over here. And he's not going to remember that
Yeah.
Paul or James or whomever called him, 6 months ago type of thing. But I do think there is an element of you got to push at least 3 times, try to overcome at least 3 objections. And again, this comes back to preparation with anything that you do in sales is what the objections are going to be. I'm not in the market. I'm not interested. I'm all set. I'm happy with what I have today, right? Like if you know all of those already and you have your script written next to you of what you're going to say, you know, and you just rattle it off and you're ready to go, and then they're never going to say anything. You go, oh, I've never heard that before. No one's ever said that to me. You're not interested? Everyone's interested. What do you mean?
Crazy. One final question. Who's going to be number one at ConnectWise this year?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Me? No. Yeah, of course, me. Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. I really enjoyed talking to you today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Um, you know what? I'm not a big social media person, but I am on LinkedIn. And that is that at this point, that's about it. But maybe if this goes viral, and maybe I do a little bit more out there. And I'm not a big social media person. I'm a little old school in that fashion, Brian. But I wanted to chat with you again. I'm a big fan. I love your content. And then maybe this is a platform for me kind of moving forward. I don't know. We'll see. So hit me up on LinkedIn.